High in the Andes, long before ink-stained parchment or letters carved stone, the Inca wove their stories into cords of colored string. These strands swung from a messenger's belt, carrying secrets across mountains, rivers, and centuries. This is the mystery of the Quipu, the strange and beautiful knot records of the Inca. The Inca built one of the greatest empires the world has ever known, stretching over mountains, rivers, and jungles. Yet they left behind no alphabet, no carved stone script like the Egyptians or the Maya. Instead, they tied their secrets into cords. A quipu looks simple at first. Colored threads hanging in clusters each, not a tiny bulge in the fiber. But together these knots held the empire's census taxes, harvests, and maybe stories or songs passed from one keeper to the next. The strings were faded but still strong after centuries buried in dry mountain tombs. I remember leaning in close, trying to imagine the hands that tied each knot. Did they know they were binding not just numbers, but the heartbeat of an empire? I once stood in front of an ancient quipu displayed behind glass. A historian friend once told me that we have cracked some parts of the Quipu's code. The basic numbers we understand. But there is something more hidden in the way knots were arranged, the colors, the gaps, the way they flow like lines of poetry, without words. Some quipu keepers were killed, others silenced. Threads were burned or lost. Today, only a few remain scattered in museums or locked away in old vaults, waiting for someone to listen with fresh eyes. Some believe the quipu might hold entire histories told in a pattern only a trained mind could read. What haunts me is the thought that when the Spanish arrived and the Inca fell, much of that knowledge vanished. Next time you hold a piece of string, twist it between your fingers and imagine telling your life story in knots. Imagine your name, your hopes, your family woven into a cord strong enough to outlast stone and paper. If you believe that sometimes the simplest things hold the deepest wisdom, hit subscribe. And stay with me as we untangle the forgotten languages that still whisper from the past. Hidden among the ancient scrolls found in desert caves lies one that does not pray or chant. It is hammered into copper, a map of secrets, waiting for hands steady enough to follow its buried clues. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in caves near Qumran, there is one that stands apart from the rest. It is not ink on fragile parchment or leather. It is hammered into metal, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to follow its clues. They call it the Copper Scroll. It's unlike the other ancient texts filled with prayers and laws and hymns. The Copper Scroll is a list. Line after line, it describes hiding places buried deep under ruins, behind walls, beneath cisterns. Treasure after treasure measured in talents of gold and silver jars, of coins, sacred vessels, enough wealth to make an emperor tremble. Scholars believe it dates back to the Second Temple period around 2,000 years ago. Some say it was written by priests, trying to keep sacred treasures safe from invaders. Others think it might be linked to the legendary lost riches of the Jerusalem temple hidden away before it fell to Rome. But here is the twist. Despite decades of searching, no one has ever found the treasure. The sites it mentions have been scoured by archaeologists, treasure hunters, and dreamers armed with shovels and maps and half-forgotten legends. He gave up everything, convinced he was only one clue away from unearthing rooms lined with gold. Died poor, but he died believing he was right. Some swear parts of it may lie under the sands of Qumran. Others believe the clues were meant to mislead, hiding the truth in plain sight. I remember reading an old story of an explorer who spent his life chasing the Copper Scroll as promise. A friend once asked me, "Do you think the treasure's real?" Maybe that is the wrong question. Maybe the true treasure is the scroll itself, a glimpse into the fears and hopes of people who knew their world might fall but refused to let its light vanish completely. Next time you hear about lost gold or hidden chambers, think about the Copper Scroll lying in a museum, its metal etched with secrets waiting for hands steady enough to dig and a heart patient enough to believe. If you believe that sometimes the greatest treasures are not what we find, but what we keep looking for, hit subscribe. Want to join me as we follow the clues that history left behind?